Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Andrew Bone here with BamaInsider.com, coming to you live. Just want to give you guys kind of a little recruiting update, a little recruiting scoop. Obviously, it was a big recruiting weekend down in Tuscaloosa for the LSU game, and we'll touch on a few of those kids who were in Tuscaloosa this past weekend. Basically, what I wanted to talk to you more about today was, there's updated rankings coming out in December, so I want to kind of touch on some kids that are committed to Alabama that I think are going to move up in the rankings. Whether that's all the way up to 5 stars. Maybe some kids outside the Rivals 100 who may jump in the Rivals 100. Maybe some 4 stars who are going to move up. I'm also going to talk to you about some new kids that we're starting to talk about. We've been hitting on them on BamaInsider.com the last couple weeks, really in the last week. So if you're not a subscriber to BamaInsider.com, get online, get on that subscription. Got a great 30-day free trial offered right now, so jump on there. I think you'll like us a lot. Also going to talk about maybe some kids that we've talked about for the last year or so, who I'm starting to think that Alabama's starting to fade for, that I don't think they're going to end up getting. Sure, it's probably going to be a disappointment for Alabama fans, but in the grand scheme of things, Alabama's going to be just fine. So first off, let's talk about the rankings. All right, so what Rivals does is Rivals kind of has their rankings period where they're the last rankings update was back in August after the summer camp season. They had the 5-star challenge, the opening. Several recruiting analysts for Rivals hit so many football camps throughout the country. Now Alabama, one of the schools that doesn't allow recruiting reporters, recruiting analysts, or reporters, or whoever attend their camps. A lot of other camps throughout the country do. So there's a lot of lot of analysts go to a lot of different camps, college camps throughout the country during the summer, and that's kind of how you get a rankings update in August, and then you kind of evaluate kids throughout the entire season. Analysts are on the road every single week, whether it's Friday night or during the week evaluating kids. They're going out and checking players out. Plus, you're getting updated highlight films. So, that's kind of how they go about doing the rankings update in December. And then, once you kind of get that rankings update in December, and there's only one more rankings update, which is kind of in late January after the All-America games, high school All-Star games, stuff like that, where you really get a chance to see these guys one last time to make sure that that you got the guys kind of right, at least what you think, before their college career, and they make either fools out of you for a bad ranking, or make you look kind of smart. So, all right. So in terms of rankings for Alabama, let's talk about where things stand right now. Alabama has the number 4 recruiting class in the country, 23 commitments. There's 7 guys in Alabama's recruiting class right now that are in the Rivals 100. Now, do I see any of those guys falling out? No, not really. But I do see some of those guys moving up in the rankings. 2 that I think are pretty clear, especially one that's pretty clear, is Bryce Young. Bryce Young, like he's either number 50 or somewhere like that in Rivals right now, which obviously that's not a great ranking according to everyone, because a lot of people think, oh, he's a 5-star. Well, there's no doubt about it. And, a lot of that was proven this football season. So keep in mind, rankings haven't been updated since August. So this ranking update is going to be pretty big, pretty significant. Bryce Young had an unbelievable senior season. Definitely has lived up and exceeded all expectations. So Rivals put out a story today, and it was a kind of a roundtable with their national recruiting analysts, regional guys, asking who each one thought should be the number 1 player in the country. Now, there were 2 of those guys, including Adam Gordon, who's the West Coast analyst, who all these 2 guys said Bryce Young, number 1 player in the country. So if you don't think Bryce Young's going to end up being a 5-star, then you're crazy. And I think, with Adam Gorney saying that, I think that should speak volumes, because he is the West Coast guy. The number one player in the country right now is DJ Ugalele, who's the number one quarterback, number one overall player in the Rivals 100 right now. Adam Gorney, West Coast analyst, lives in California. So in his opinion, he thinks Bryce Young is the best player in the country. Now, will it set up that way when the rankings come out? We don't know yet. There's going to be some heated debate when those guys meet and talk and try to figure out, who's 1 through 500. There's definitely, I think there's definitely an argument for Bryce Young to be number one. But regardless, I think he's going to be a 5-star. I think he's going to be in the top 10. So that's definitely something that Alabama fans should be excited about. Another guy I think is going to move up is Moines Kennedy. He's one of the top overall linebackers in the country. He's an inside linebacker from Theodore High School. Reminds a lot of people of a former Theodore High School star, C.J. Mosley. Kind of very similar in terms of size, speed, quickness, ability to read plays. I mean, he's just an excellent football player. He's currently rated as the number 2 player in the state of Alabama behind Quandarius Robinson. I have a feeling Moines Kennedy is going to move up to number 1. I think he's just an excellent football player. I think he's a 5-star caliber kid, and I think there's a good chance we could see him move all the way up to 5 stars. So keep an eye out on Moines Kennedy as well. Now, there's 2 guys in Alabama's class that I don't really have any rankings control over. And I'm not saying I have control. I have an input, but it's hard to make input for guys that are outside the state of Alabama, because I don't see these guys. Some of these other recruiting analysts do, but from watching film and just evaluating these guys, from that regard, 2 guys that I think are 5-star caliber kids, without a doubt. And one is Timothy Smith, the big defensive lineman from Sebastian River High School in Florida. Big kid. I mean, he's 6'4", 6'5", over 300, I think 320 pounds. And it's hard to imagine a kid moving as well as he does at that size. I mean, just a very dominant, quick kid. Kind of reminds me of Ashawn Robinson coming out of high school. I mean, just incredible quickness, strength, power, size. I mean, he is just a dominant force on the defensive front. I mean, just watching him play, watching his highlights. I mean, I don't know if I've seen a better high school defensive lineman in terms of an interior guy who's 320 pounds plus, move that well. I mean, he's just incredible. So we'll see how highly he gets ranked. Maybe he doesn't get to the 5-star status, but could end up going up, and maybe he gets that 5th star after an all-star game in January. And then the 4th guy I wanted to mention, or the other guy that I was going to mention, is who I think could easily be a 5-star, is Drew Sanders. Incredible athlete. 6'4", 6'5", about 220 pounds. And runs extremely well, sideline to sideline type guy, plays on both sides of the ball. Very dominant high school football player at a top high school football program in the state of Texas. Another guy that could easily wait. They could easily wait and say, all right, we're going to wait and see him at one of these all-star games, and then determine if he's a 5-star. So I think those are 2 guys who could easily end up being 5-stars. Maybe in December, but maybe not until January. So those are, like I said, those are a couple guys that could easily move to 5 stars. Now, there are some guys outside the top 100 that I could see easily moving in. One guy for sure I think is going to move in, Chad Simmons, Southeast recruiting analyst for Rivals, posted the other day that he's really going to make a strong push for this guy to be in the Rivals 100, is Brian Branch. Big-time defensive back from Sandy Creek High School in Georgia, had an unbelievable senior season. I think every single week we saw a ridiculous one-handed catch, whether it was an interception or a touchdown pass. I mean, he just had a tremendous senior season. So he's one that we probably expect moving to the Rivals 100 when the rankings are updated. A couple other guys that we could potentially say maybe not. It's hard to predict. Thal Jones Bell, who's just outside the Rivals 100. Roydell Williams. He had a great senior season, even though he was hurt a little bit. Every time he was on the field, made a big impact. And then William Anderson, the 4-star defensive end, pass rusher from Georgia. Those are some guys that I could easily see in the top 100. But if they're left out, maybe just on the outside, I wouldn't be surprised with that either. Any other 4-stars that could potentially move up? Not necessarily into the Rivals 100, just up overall. I'm looking at Trayshawn Holden, who is not in the Rivals 250. Tremendous senior season. I think he's definitely one of the top wide receivers in the country. I think Alabama's wide receiver class is excellent with Javon Baker, Thal Jones-Bell, and Trayshawn Holden. I would certainly look at Trayshawn Holden as potentially moving up into the Rivals 250. Kyle Edwards, another kid who's having a unbelievable senior season. Kyle Edwards is one of those kids who took over for John Emery, who signed with LSU last year. He was the number 2 back behind John Emery at Destrehan High School, and certainly picking up where Emery left off. So I think actually he's outside the top 250, so we can see him moving up as well. And then another in-state kid that I really like a lot that's who had a great senior season, who's still playing, is Christian Story. And he does it on both sides of the football. Just a dominant athlete at Lynette High School. Definitely a kid that I'm very high on. And I don't know if the national regional guys get a chance to see him, really that much, but just from watching his film and seeing, how he performs each week, I mean, he's just been having a dominant season, and, good to see him move up. So are there any 3-stars that could move up? Alabama doesn't really have a lot of 3-star commitments, but, 2 guys that I like a lot, Jamarian Latham, in-state defensive lineman from Pickens County, who's coached by former Alabama player Michael Williams, who's a tight end at Alabama, was in Nick Saban's first number 1 recruiting class, that 2008 class. He plays on both sides of the ball, offensive line, defensive line. I mean, the competition may not be good, but if you're putting kids in the dirt, 15 times a game, I mean, that's, I don't care what your competition is like. I mean, he's just out there, killing people. And we've seen plenty of top kids from lower level schools. OJ Howard played in an AISA school. There's tons of players out there, every single year that, they just don't get a lot of love because, their competition may not be as great as, maybe somebody that plays at a 5 or a 6A school. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of an overall look at, where the rankings are right now, kind of what I'm, predicting or thinking will happen. We won't know until December, but those are just some of the kids that I think that have a good chance to move up, have had a great senior season, and we'll see how the final rankings turn out. All right, so what I wanted to talk about next is kind of some new targets. I mean, we talked about, it seems like we talk about the same guys every single week on here, and the recruiting board changes throughout the year. And, there's new targets that come up, whether they're, and there's a few different reasons. Alabama may have missed on somebody, so they go and offer somebody else. Alabama continues to evaluate kids, and a kid maybe emerges as a senior. We've talked about so many of these top kids throughout the years, and maybe somebody who Alabama offered early started to look more at Alabama. We saw that with Rashaan Evans. Rashaan Evans, former 5-star linebacker. Obviously, everybody knows who Rashaan is. Didn't have Alabama in his top 5 heading into his senior season, and then Alabama continued to chip away, and they got in the race for him. Obviously, they ended up signing him. Reuben Foster was committed to Auburn heading into his senior season. T.J. Yeldon was also committed to Auburn heading into his senior season. Then we've seen kids like Eddie Jackson who, Alabama must have missed on somebody to go off after this kid who didn't play as a junior. And we see how that worked out. Josh Jacobs, another kid who Alabama actually missed on a couple running backs late in the process. They were trying to flip LaMichael Pirine, who's running back at Florida. He ended up not flipping, and Alabama pushed for Josh Jacobs to jump on board. So that worked out. So there's so many different situations that play into the part of Alabama recruiting, certain kids. So, two guys that I wanted to mention real quick. Javion Cohen, he's a four-star offensive lineman from Central Phoenix City in Alabama. Alabama's always been interested in this kid. He's visited several times, and they saw him during the summer, and he really wasn't, in terms of his weight, not really what they were, hoping for. I think he was about 270 pounds. Now, at the same time, I think he had been sick. I think he had mono or something. That may not be 100% accurate, but I'm pretty positive he had mono or he got sick. He was out of school for a little bit, and he had gotten his weight down. I mean, maybe it was under 270 pounds, but I think Alabama continued to tell him, hey, we like you. We want you to get your weight up. If you get your weight up, we're really going to push for you, and because we really think you're an excellent football player. Well, Alabama went and saw him maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. Charles Kelly, who's his recruiting coach, went and watched him play. Extremely impressed with him. They brought him in for a visit for the LSU game this past weekend. I think he was blown away by everything. But the biggest thing was he was 296 pounds. So 6'5", 296 pounds. Alabama's kind of all in on him. They really want to flip him away from his commitment to Auburn. Obviously, tough to do, especially being in Phoenix City, which is right there next to Auburn. Very tough to flip a kid from there. But he is going to come back for an official visit in December. I think Alabama's got a good chance with him. Alabama's been able to flip Auburn commitments in the past. I think they're going to be able to do it again with Javion Cohen. So watch out for Javion Cohen over the course of the next month, potentially flipping to Alabama. Another interesting player that's kind of moved up the list and kind of emerged over the last few weeks is Ronald Williams. He's a junior college defensive back from Hutchinson Community College in Kansas. Big time player, 6'2", 190 pounds. I think he's an early enrollee. He's really kind of shot up Alabama's recruiting board this season. Alabama, another kid that Alabama's going all in on right now. I think he's a top tier target for them. And Alabama really trying to add one more cornerback in this class. They've got a really good defensive back class, four defensive backs committed, but really trying to add one more corner. Ronald Williams, probably at the top of the list right now. There's another kid, Ethan Pouncey, who just recently decommitted from Texas. Also very high on Alabama's recruiting board. I think they're going to get him in for an official visit. So those are probably two names at the defensive back position that I'd keep a close eye on. Now, we had been talking about some other guys throughout the year. Nadab Joseph. I don't think he's going to end up in Alabama's class anymore. I think he's still got a little ways to go, and he's not going to be able to graduate from junior college until at least the spring. So I think Alabama has really kind of turned their attention on Ronald Williams in terms of junior college defensive back recruiting. We may still see Nadab Joseph come in for an official, but as of right now, kind of thinking Ronald Williams might be the top guy for Alabama. We saw some kids that were in Tuscaloosa this past weekend for official visits. Darnell Washington, Arian Smith, Jordan Birch, Zacchaeus Walker. And, as of right now, it's kind of hard to predict what's going to happen with some of those guys. Jordan Birch is a kid who just doesn't talk at all. He's not going to say anything about his recruiting journey. Doesn't tell anybody, doesn't tell his coaches, doesn't tell anybody. So anything's kind of, up in the air with him. If I had to predict, I don't see him in Alabama's class. I think he's going to end up staying a little bit closer to home. Maybe Clemson, maybe Georgia. I don't know if he's going to end up in South Carolina, but I do think he stays a little bit closer to home in terms of just a couple hours away. I don't see him out of Alabama. Darnell Washington, obviously Alabama still looking for another tight end in this class. 5-star target, big time player. Alabama missed on Eric Gilbert a few weeks ago, who ended up committing to LSU over Alabama and Georgia. Darnell Washington, going into the visit, definitely seemed all in on Georgia. That was going to be the school that he ends up choosing, and it probably will be. I'm not saying that Alabama is a leader or anything like that, but I do think that Alabama has made up some ground there. I think they're really starting to push for him. there's some other tight ends that are out there that, a lot of people are talking about that may come in for visits, that have been in Tuscaloosa for visits. I think it's Darnell Washington or bust. I don't see them going after another tight end. I know, JJ Pigas from Oxford, Mississippi has been mentioned, but I think it's either Darnell Washington or they go after a graduate transfer at tight end. So we'll see what happens there. Let's see who else was in town. You had Arian Smith that was also in town, 4-star wide receiver. He told me, he said, Alabama is the perfect fit for me. But same time, very tough kid to read. He's not going to make a decision anytime soon. Going to wait until I think February to commit. So Alabama's just going to continue to chip away there, continue to recruit him, and kind of see where things go. Zacchaeus Walker, 4-star defensive lineman from Georgia, was also in Tuscaloosa last weekend. I think he had a great visit. We hadn't had an opportunity to catch up with him just yet. Unfortunately, his grandmother died this week, so I hadn't really done any interviews. But I think Alabama has done a good job recruiting him. They would certainly take him as a part of this class, but he's been kind of a heavy Georgia lean since the summer. Not sure that's going to change, but Alabama, still very much involved with him, still heavily recruiting him. Then the fifth official visitor who was on campus this past weekend was Jace McClellan, Oklahoma commitment. He doesn't say anything either. One of those kids that just cuts off communication with the media, doesn't really say anything, hasn't really posted anything about the visit. There's a lot of people who think that there's a chance that Alabama flips him. I don't think that's the case. I think he's pretty solid with Oklahoma. If something were to happen at Oklahoma, if they would have lost all their games this season, their offensive coordinator left, maybe. But I think as of right now, still predicting him to sign with Oklahoma. Zach Evans, another running back that Alabama's been recruiting, didn't show up for an unofficial visit this past weekend. And a lot of people keep asking me, well, what's Alabama going to do at running back? Well, they don't have to do anything at running back. They've got 2 guys that are committed, and Ronald Williams and Kyle Edwards. I think heading into the season, there was this thought that Alabama was going to lose Najee Harris and Brian Robinson. I just don't see Brian Robinson leaving after this season. I think he's going to be back. I think adding a third running back in this class isn't really that important. Would they take a guy like Zach Evans or Jace McClellan? Yeah, probably so. But is it going to be a big miss if they don't get either one of them? No, I think they'll be fine getting 2 running backs in the class, getting Trey Sanders back from injury after next season, likely getting Brian Robinson back. Yeah, I think Najee Harris is definitely gone, but I think they're going to be just fine at the running back position. A couple other big targets I'll hit on real quick. They were in Tuscaloosa this past weekend. Philip Webb. We've talked about Philip Webb for a long time, and I think that LSU is in the driver's seat for him. I'm predicting him to go to LSU. A lot of people have asked me, well, who's Alabama going to replace him with? Nobody. I mean, there's nobody that they're really going after. That it's not a position really of need. He's just one of those elite players that they want to get in this class. So it's not like they're trying to go after somebody else and freaking out that they're going to miss out on him. And Alabama's got some excellent pass rushers in this class. You look at Chris Braswell, 5-star. You've got Quandarius Robinson, top 30 player in the country. And William Anderson, another big time player who had 20 sacks as a junior, having another, very productive year this season. So you got 3 excellent pass rushers in this class, edge guys. Yes, Philip Webb, excellent player, can be is going to be a big time player at the college level, but, I don't think it's necessarily not saying it's a good or bad thing. I'm just saying it's not really, a humongous miss if they miss out on him. It would be a humongous miss if they missed out on him and they were going after and trying to figure out, all right, who's still available as a pass rusher that we can go after. They're just not going after anybody else, and it's not going to happen. So I think they're going to be just fine. McKinley Jackson was also in town, big 4-star defensive tackle that Alabama absolutely loves. He's not going to make a decision until February. So that's just something that Alabama has to continue to chip away at, try to get him on board. But I think Alabama in very good position with him right now. But like I said, long way to go with him. In-home visits in December and January are going to be pretty key, and plus he's going to take some more official visits in January before making that decision. But that battle will be won a couple days or even the day of National Signing Day. In terms of defensive line recruiting, I obviously think he's a very important piece. But I also think Timothy Smith, keeping him on board is very important as well. Timothy Smith, the Alabama commitment that we talked about earlier, that has been committed since the summer, still being pursued heavily by Florida. But he was in Tuscaloosa this past weekend. Great trip. Going to be back for an official in December. As long as Alabama can keep him on board and potentially get McKinley Jackson, they're going to have an excellent defensive line class. So, all right, that's going to be pretty much it. I'll take a few questions. I'm not going to stay here long because I do have an appointment, but I am going to check a few of these questions here. Do I expect Alabama to sign Arian Smith? As I said, I think Alabama's in the race. He says they're in his top 3, but we'll just have to kind of wait and see. All right, got a bunch of questions in here on stuff that I've already kind of answered, since the beginning. Do I expect Jason Jones to stay in Bama's class and play O-line? I do. I think he does end up sticking in Alabama's class. Any update on Trey Sanders recovering from the foot injury? I don't have an update. If you check with Kyle Henderson or Tony Sakalas on our Bama Insider Talk of Champions board, they might be able to help you a little bit more. What position does Alabama expect Drew Sanders to play at Alabama? Outside linebacker. Let's see. Which committed recruit can make an instant impact? I think the obvious choice is obviously Bryce Young, but if Tim Smith sticks, I think that he's got a good chance. Look for Moines Kennedy as well. Do I think Dylan Moses will return next season? I do not, but you never know. Any chance Drew Sanders plays tight end? I don't think so. Do I expect Alabama to sign Cohen? Yes, I do. Has Pete Golden's defensive performance negatively impacted recruiting? Go look at Alabama's defensive class. I mean, it is outstanding, especially at the linebacker position. So, no, I don't think so. Let's see. Do I think this class will fill all areas of need? A lot will depend on what happens with Darnell Washington, because I think tight ends, I said it since the beginning, tight end was the biggest position of need in this class. They have one commitment in Caden Clark, but they definitely need another guy. But like I said before, they're not going to just take anybody. They want an elite guy, somebody who they feel like can make a big difference. And if they can't get Darnell Washington, they're going to move on to graduate transfers. But yeah, I think it'd be a big miss. If they don't get him, and then defensive line, they got to finish strong on defensive line. Hang on to Timothy Smith. That's very important. And then get McKinley Jackson, and you got a great defensive line class. Let's see. Was LSU ahead of Alabama in recruiting prior to last Saturday? Yes, they were. Who are the early enrollees? There's a bunch of them. If you come on BamaInsider.com, I'll give you the complete list. I can't go over it right now because I don't have the complete list in front of me. But that's pretty. I know that. I know that there's several, including Bryce Young and Moines Kennedy. Question about Jace McClellan. I answered it a little while ago. I don't think he's going to end up in Alabama's class. I mean, I think Alabama's done a good job, but I just don't see it. How good is Jamil Burroughs? I think as long as he keeps his weight under control, he's very good. I mean, there's a reason why he was heavily recruited early in his recruitment. Big, strong, quick, aggressive defensive lineman. His weight had gotten a little bit out of control, but I think he's fixed that. As long as he gets down to Tuscaloosa, gets in Scott Cochran's weight program, he's going to be just fine. All right, let's see. I believe But someone's asking about Joku, the Miami tight end. The biggest thing with Joku, or the biggest thing with Alabama and graduate transfer tight ends is, they're trying to evaluate guys, on and off the field. Do they fit into the culture? Do they, can they come in and make a big impact? That's the biggest thing with, with these great. They're not looking at the transfer portal and saying, oh, look, there's a tight end. Let's go get him. They've got to evaluate these guys just like they evaluate kids in high school or junior college. They're evaluating kids that are in the transfer portal as well. So they got to bring them on campus and kind of evaluate them and see if they want to go after them. Why is Alabama's class not like recent classes with 5 stars? Well, like I said, there's going to be some kids that are in Alabama's class right now that are going to move up, that are going to be 5 stars. So you could easily see 3 or 4 5 stars, by December. Maybe you go after some more, but it's going to be tough. I mean, there's other top programs that are out there that are recruiting at a high level that you're going to have to compete against. I mean, there's only a certain number of 5 stars. I mean, Clemson's doing well, Georgia's doing well, Ohio State, LSU, Alabama, obviously. It's not like it's not just Alabama anymore. There's other top programs that are out there that are recruiting well. So they got to step up, and I think they've got a really good class right now. They've missed on some guys, but other schools have missed on top players as well. All right, last question I'm going to take. If Alabama doesn't get Darnell, are there any other tight end possibilities? Some people have mentioned J.J. Pigas from Oxford, Mississippi. I don't see Alabama really pushing for him. I mean, they may bring him in for an official visit. I just don't see them signing him. But yeah, I think Darnell Washington or bust. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for joining today. If you have any other questions, jump on BamaInsider.com. That's where I'm at every single day. You don't just have me once a week on here. You got me every single day on BamaInsider.com. So come over there, sign up for a subscription, join our family, join our community. Love to have you. Thanks for joining this week's chat session. Really enjoyed it, guys. And we will talk to you next time. All right. See ya.